Okay, it's a busy week at 26th and Cal, so I wanted to kind of keep this for Sunday night, keep it fresh in everybody's minds. Starting tomorrow, the murder trial for the offender in John Rivera's murder in March of 2019 begins. Jury selection. It will start Tuesday and Wednesday and be in room 706 and then be moved to room 700 on Thursday and Friday. Closing arguments are expected on Monday or Tuesday of next week. That room number is yet to be determined. So please come out and support, obviously, John, his family, his friends, his memory, and the men and women of Chicago Police Department. There is also a hearing in room 500 at 9:30 in the morning for the murderer of Luis Huesca. And finally, in relationship to court situations, our outgoing state's attorney, that piece of garbage, Kim Foxx, we have gotten word, is slated to drop all murder charges against Alex Villa, who murdered Cliff Lewis. That motion is expected to be presented in court, room 702 on Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. We are asking everybody and anybody possible who supports the police to pack the courtroom. Hopefully the media gets wind of this and at least force her to start answering questions on why this is going to happen. But apparently the family's been notified that this is her intent come Wednesday morning. Shame on her. Godspeed, Cliff. We're going to try and do everything we can to derail that from happening. We will be filing a motion on behalf of lodge members and the FOP, as Cliff was, and try and see what we can do to prevent the judge from entertaining this ridiculous motion of this nightmare of a state's attorney who can't leave office quick enough. That being said, onward to lodge business. City business primarily. It's pretty interesting, to say the least, that New York's Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted for fraud, embezzlement, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Oh, how the mighty fall so quickly. This is what happens when people are basically elected because they fit a mold, and people just expect someone to look a certain way in order to be their mayor. To be as crooked and dirty as he is, his staffers are literally taking breaks from interviews to destroy evidence in front of the feds. That's how rock solid and this seems to be. We can only hope, I can only hope, and I'm sure most of the membership does too, that kind of investigation happens at Chicago City Hall. Heaven knows we've had our share of corrupt aldermen over the years and other politicians. And there's certainly been enough skeptics and questions about even the top spot being pretty corrupt over the years, just never having the goods on them. But let's just take this ridiculous contract when we are $900 million in the red going into next year's budget, and this mayor gives this healthcare system for the migrants another $100 million contract. That's upwards of $500 million for healthcare for these migrants that this mayor has championed, and these idiot aldermen keep spending money on. It needs to stop. To think that there's not some quid pro quo going on there and would be shocking. It is Chicago after all. Let's hope the feds are looking into Brandon Johnson's administration and what they've been doing, because God knows they are as incompetent as they come. Eric Adams was somewhat competent apparently, but just a crook and a thief. And on the migrant issue, we haven't had much blowback, but I want to touch on the FOP endorsement of President Trump and people who, the handful of people sending me nasty emails talking about him being a convict. I find it rather laughable that police are supposed to have an open mind about criminals, but then these same people turn around and champion these trumped up charges on President Trump and this witch hunt to try and basically make sure he doesn't get reelected. But kudos to the ICE people, agent, or whatever senior staff, whoever it was, that released the FOIA information finally that's been requested for years about this catch and release policy at the border. And who are we really letting in? President Trump was mocked and basically vilified when he talked about these countries like Venezuela and others sending their rapists, their murderers, and everybody else here. We now have documented proof. ICE's numbers, and this is the Biden administration, and Mayorkas, who has run every bit of interference and has been incompetent as a Homeland Security Secretary as we have ever had. But again, 13,000 murderers from other countries have been allowed, caught and detained and released into this country. 16,000 sexual assault rapists have been let into this country. And Chicago, because they migrate other places. They're not just still sitting at the border. They are in our city. This has been the policy of this administration, not only on a national level, but in Chicago with this sanctuary city nonsense. It needs to stop. The politicians who promoted it, embraced it, and continue to need to have accountability and need to be voted out of office. Again, we are now facing a $900 million deficit. And to the people on the south and west side who may see this, I got one thing to say. Your relief isn't coming, because now they're going to say they don't have the money because they're in the red, because of all the money they spent there. It was never about you. It was always about a divide and conquer to appease and get reelected. And now you're going to be left holding the bag once again. But many of you voted for this. You're going to have an opportunity going forward to stop this insanity and have some level-headed choices going forward and make some common sense decisions about the direction of this city. In November, obviously, there's a gigantic election coming up. Hopefully, it's a little closer than a lot of people anticipate in this state specifically, which I think everybody assumes is a slam dunk for the Democrats. I think people are kind of getting sick of the same rhetoric over and over again with very little delivery on the promises. But the state's attorney's race is going to be monumental to putting this city back on track to law and order. But going forward after that, we're going to certainly focus on City Hall in 2027. I can assure you of that, with the mayor's race and with several aldermen who absolutely need to be replaced. That being said, see you in court this week. Have a good rest of the weekend.